tools for turbulent times. Hi, Daybree.
Hello. Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning. I do not. Unity does not seek to convert you from any one thing to any other. But unity seeks to support you in following the wisdom which we believe is inherent and within each one of us. We can each enjoy countless and creative ways of pointing us to the truth. But in the end, each of us has to discern that truth for him or herself. We recognize you as an individualized expression of the one presence and the one power, the one life that initiates and sustains all life in our world. And we celebrate your presence with us always. I often say that your unity community is your spiritual playground. It's your sandbox, so to speak. And that's really to be said of our individual lives. This isn't a dress rehearsal. Our lives, as well as our church community, is where we each expand our understanding of spiritual tools, where we try things out, where we seek to find spiritual wholeness through various avenues, and this being one of them. There is nothing I can tell you that you don't already know. But in the words of a poet, I can weave a million words that might awaken and inspire you to listen to the choir in your soul, the wisdom in your own soul. And so the pointing to the truth that we are exploring today are the expansion of our spiritual tools for turbulent times. And so we might first ask ourselves the question, well, are these turbulent times? Well, anytime there is an election, especially a presidential election, and there is a close margin, that means that, about 50% of the people voted for the person in office, and about half of them did not. And that exposes a chasm in our society. It doesn't create a chasm, for the chasm was already there, but it exposes, it makes obvious this chasm in our society, that there's this profound difference between people. These differences in our beliefs and our loyalties and our viewpoints or our opinions. And it reveals a gulf, a rift between us. The word chasm in Greek means gaping hollow. And at times it truly feels that way, that there's this gaping hollow in our society, that there's this divergence of feelings and interest. And this is the tightrope that we sometimes feel ourselves walking. If we are sensitive to this, we may find ourselves withdrawing for about half of our friends, our neighbors, our acquaintances. Our families might feel differently than we do. And so we withdraw so as not to offend or cause anger or to be the target of anger or upset feelings. And this is the environment that exists then, a divided nation. This environment exists, this divided nation. And it feels so intense for us. It feels so intense. And yet, it has been almost 50 years before any president has gotten anywhere near 60% of the popular vote. And that's just a side effect. That's just the outcome of having a two-party system. And so this is actually the norm. It just has felt so intense these past few years. And so we have political unrest, we have the pandemic, we have physical and emotional isolation, and that has led to an increase for some of feeling depressed or anxious. And we have these social tensions. I've painted a rather unpleasant picture here. But those are the turbulent times of which I am referring as we look at the spiritual tools and what we can do in our world to lessen the effect of all these things on our everyday lives and on our neighbors geographically or across the world. Well, the awareness is truly the key. Awareness is always the key. Awareness of our place in the world, awareness of what it is we are here to do in our world, how we can help our world. For conflict and disagreement has always seemed to exist in our world. I mean, it goes back to Cain and Abel. We've got a long history here. And yet we have, and we continue to use and to fine tune and practice these spiritual tools, not only so that we can live more peacefully in these turbulent times, but so that we can also heal these turbulent times, so that we can use our love and our wisdom to soothe the rest of the planet. In one of our previous lessons, I talked about polarity. And polarity is just a big word that means we tend as humans to see those who don't think like us as being rather far apart from us. We can think of two ends of a spectrum, or if you want to think of yourself at the South Pole and those that are causing all the problems in the world, or at the North Pole, there's a large distance between us. And it's hard to remember we are one when we've got this huge continuing, this polarity of ideas. And so in the first lesson, I talked about the spider in the shower. What do we do about that? Do we just turn it on and let the spider take its chances? Well, that increases our sense of polarity. Or do we rescue the little spider and save its life? And now we've collapsed that spectrum, living as the knowledge that we are one, respecting all of life. And the spiritual tool that was suggested was to go somewhere where there are a lot of people, a park, the beach, a school, the grocery store, whatever, and just silently say to yourself as you see other people, especially people that maybe don't look exactly like you do, say in your mind, just like me, you want love in your life. Just like me, you want to be safe. Just like me, you want harmony in your relationships. And then a couple weeks after that, we talked about polarity again, and I suggested that you take another deeper step with that framework. And that was to, when you find yourself in scenarios where you're feeling like us and them, those people that are causing the problems out there, to use that same affirmation. Even though you might not know their names or be able to see their faces, imagine that group of people, whoever they are, and say to yourself, just like me, they want to be loved. Just like me, they want to be heard. Just like me, they want to be safe. Well, today I'm suggesting a third step. That as you find yourself feeling us and them, that group, those people, if you can repeat that affirmation just like me that you tried previously, and then take it another step by saying, there is room in me for you. There is room in me for you. And this does not require agreement with their actions, agreement with their viewpoints. This does not require agreement. And if you're able to do that, to say, there is room in me for you, you might be able to go the next step even deeper and say, there's room in my heart for you. There is room in my heart for you. And in that way, we are closing the gap for a truly believe that polarity is the cause for so much of our turmoil internally and in our world. The more we can recognize the one presence and the one power, the more we all live in greater peace and greater harmony. And we continue to follow that second commandment as our guide, loving our neighbor as ourself. For this is truly loving action, to include others in our hearts, to acknowledge them and see them as one with us. We are them, they are us. Well, today is the first Sunday in Lent, Lent being the 40 days before Easter. And we practice in unity this conscious release of whatever no longer serves us so that we may discover new ways of living, new ways of loving. And that's what we're doing with our spiritual tools. We're finding new ways of living, new ways of loving. And today I would like to introduce 3 more tools from Pema Chodron's work in welcoming the unwelcome. And the first one is the practice of open awareness. And remember, awareness is the key. Awareness of our world, our place in our world, and our responsibility to our world. And so I share with you a quote. Practicing open awareness is a gradual process of continually going back to seeing what we're seeing, smelling what we're smelling, feeling what we're feeling. Whatever happens, the method is to keep letting go of the extra stuff and to return to just what's there. Well, there are many ways to practice an open awareness, but they all include being fully present, just showing up for life and opening up our senses, our mind, and our hearts to the experiences and letting ourselves be as free from the conceptual limitations that we place upon any situation. And what that means is stopping ourselves from labeling good or bad, us or them. The more we can release those labels, the more we can relax, we can rest, we can see ourselves sitting in the middle of what's happening, just allowing ourselves to be in the middle without judgment, without labeling good or bad, and allowing ourselves that flow. And that's a good thing when we can allow ourselves to do that, to disengage and to release our attachment to any one thing or any one way of being. And part of what we do, part of what our mind does with that, I call it MSU, making stuff up. Our minds are very good at making stuff up. And you might use the S, the stuff. You could use a different word if you chose to. We make stuff up. We fill in the gap. It's what we do. It's what our mind is created to do to make our lives easier. But so often, what we make up has absolutely nothing to do with reality. I'll give you an example. Say you get an email from someone that's sent to you and several other people, and as you read it, it sounds kind of snarky. And you take personal offense that that person is directing that at me. That person doesn't like me. I don't know what happened, but that was directed at me. Now you made that up. Maybe not. You made that up. And then you start to look for proof. Well, I came in the room and I said hello to them and they didn't acknowledge me. Or they smiled at Sally and they didn't smile at me. We start finding proof for the stuff we make up. The good news is it works the other way. We can affirm the goodness in all. We can affirm the wisdom and the loving presence in all people. And that will be proven as well. And so this sitting in the middle and this holding the space of open awareness is really an antidote to this making stuff up, this escalation we can find going on in our lives when we find ourselves in that place. So when we're able to sit in the middle more and more and more, and being aware more and more and more of releasing what we're making up, allowing ourselves to just be present, to see what we see, to smell what we smell, to hear what we hear, we gain a great confidence in the goodness in life, in the goodness in all. And so that's called the practice of open awareness. The second tool is called Our Wisdom Changes the World. And I'll share a quote. Whether distraction and aggression proliferate globally, or peacefulness and harmony grow stronger depends on how we as citizens of the world feel about ourselves. We can't have an enlightened society if we are holding a space of smallness, if we're coming from our small self, our small mind, our ego. We can't have the affirmation of our basic goodness if we're coming from a place of judgment. For most of us, this is a work in progress. We can affirm, we can say, I'm going to believe in the basic goodness. I am going to believe in the basic goodness. And right now, wherever you are, especially if you're in the sanctuary, you could look around the room and you could nod. You could say to yourself, yes, I believe in the basic goodness of that person. And yes, I believe in the basic goodness of that person. And yes, I believe in the basic goodness of that person. Then you get to the next one and you go, I'm not so sure. Unfortunately, sometimes the one we're not so sure about is our mirror. When we look at ourselves, it's so difficult for us to see beyond our flaws and to affirm our basic goodness. Quite often, we are the one that we doubt the most. So one way we can look at this is we know that the sun is in the sky. It is always shining. And we know sometimes there are clouds present. For our own life, if we affirm our basic goodness, but our attention is on the clouds, it is ineffective. Sometimes we have to acknowledge those clouds. We have to get up close and personal with those clouds. And when we do, we actually see that there is a nothingness to them and they fall away. They may block the sun for a time, but the sun is always shining, just as our own wisdom, the sun of our wisdom is always, always shining, always shining. And so, in other words, be friendly to yourself as you're looking to affirm the basic goodness in the world. For each of us can change how we look at ourselves. And when we do, that becomes our basis for how we see others. If we can affirm our basic goodness, we can affirm the basic goodness of other cultures, of other people more easily. And we need that now more than ever. It is even fair to say how we feel about ourselves determines the future of our world. We can respond to the state of affairs that I described earlier out of trust in our vast goodness and the goodness of others. And we as citizens of the world can help direct how we move forward through wisdom, through love, through caring and compassion. And the third tool this morning is called Welcoming the Unwelcome with Laughter. And I share a quote. Humor lightens up the spiritual path. It gives us the openness to go deeper into the teachings rather than becoming fixed on what we think they mean. And Pema gives a wonderful example in her book. She says in her family, she's kind of known for obsessing and fussing about things. And so she was visiting with her son, who is an adult, had his own family. And she realized she'd misplaced her water bottle, and she started fretting about the water bottle like a little mouse. Is it here? Is it here? Is it over there? Did I leave it at the mall? Do we need to call the store? She was obsessing about this water bottle. Her son, who had recently read a book about Buddhism, and remember, Pima is an American Buddhist nun, their teachings are very much about, non-attachment and suffering. We suffer through attachment. So her son starts teasing with her. He says to his son, look at grandma. Look at how she is suffering. She is suffering because she is attached to her water bottle. If she would just release her attachment to her water bottle, she would stop suffering. Well, she started laughing, and that lightened the mood. And of course, eventually the water bottle showed up. But now she says, even today, whenever she finds herself obsessing, she remembers the joke that her son played with her and how lighthearted it was, and how connecting it was. And she laughs at herself. When we laugh at ourselves, all those things, all those terrible flaws that we think we have, they become less solid. They become less real. Being able to laugh at ourselves connects us with humanness. It helps us to connect to and have empathy with other people, and to remember that at our foundation, we are all equal. Laughter lifts so much more than just our mood. It elevates every aspect of our being. It lightens up our experience. It helps us appreciate who we are without judgment. And when we do that, it's so much easier to regard others the same way. When our mind is full of warmth, of humor, we are in touch with the best of ourselves. May this day be filled with much love, and may it be guided by that inherent wisdom that is within each one of us, that is within each one of you. And may it be grounded in a renewed commitment to practice new ways of living. Let that be our Lenten experience, to make a commitment during these 40 days to use our spiritual tools to try something new, to expand our awareness of our world, and to love out loud. For this and so much more, we are grateful, and together we say, and so it is.